The image you're looking at is Edwin Jemison, who was decapitated by a cannonball during the battle at Cold Harbor. Welcome back. Today's episode takes us to Cold Harbor battlefield near Mechanicsville, Virginia, and there have been countless sightings on the grounds. There's actually a ghost tour of the graveyard and the burial grounds and colonial mansions, hospitals, and prisons, and stories of abused slaves, murdered colonists, and travelers populate all of that. But there's been countless sightings, and we're going to visit there today, and I'll let you know what I see, and you can tell me what you see during the videos. It should be mentioned that the Battle of Cold Harbor was fought during the American Civil War near Mechanicsville, Virginia, from May 31st to June 12th, 1864, with the most significant fighting occurring on June 3rd. Right, and if you look here, these cannons mark the approximate position of a four-gun battery belonging to the Richmond Fayette Artillery, part of Major J.P.W. Byrd's battalion that held strategic points along the Confederate main line. And this battle supported General Alfred H. Colquilt's Georgia Brigade on June 1st, 1864, and took part in the repulse of a Union attack that evening. These two cannons here. Yep. So you can imagine these cannons here. I mean, constantly being loaded with those cannonballs, and just imagine them being flung into where you're dug in at, and they were just taking people out with these things. And these are just two of them. They had these things lined up everywhere, all along this field. So all the ones that were at that woods line right there, they couldn't get an inch close. And you see, it's cleared out all right there. So if they saw any sign of anything, they would just point those cannons over there and fire away. And the people that were shooting were protected. They can just duck behind these cannons. They couldn't get hit. And here we are in Cold Harbor battlefield, and you can already see, if you look, all of these are trenches. See those hills, like those dips right there, and it goes all the way down here, in like kind of like a zigzag pattern. So the Confederate soldiers were dug in, making it very difficult for the Union soldiers to capture this part of Virginia known as Cold Harbor. And it's not too far from Richmond. They have a nice visitor center with lots of information, brochures. I met two of the park rangers that work there, one of which who shared a story with me. You'll hear that later. The other shared some stories with me, but he didn't want to be on camera. He didn't even want to be recorded, but he gave me some information to share with you all, as well as some other locations to check out. They had some interesting, actually had trading cards in there, which I thought was interesting, along with a bunch of different maps of all the places, that you can tour. They have a really nice hiking trail if you want to some exercise in and hike and see a little bit of history. So what I'm going to do is go through some of the history of Cold Harbor Battlefield and why it's haunted. We all know thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people died there. They were never properly buried. They were just left to rot. A lot of them were. And we're just going to tour the site and see what we can see and get a little history lesson on the way. All right, and you said you had a story from Malvern Hill, right?
Yes, Malvern Hill is a battlefield that's part of the Richmond National Battlefield Park. And this would have been last summer or early fall. I was over there walking the trails, cleaning signs, putting out brochures. And as I was passing down, it's basically the parallels a farm road that leads to another part of the battlefield. I distinctly heard somebody say, "We couldn't." That's what they said, "We couldn't." And I looked around thinking somebody was behind me or maybe to my left or right. And there was nobody. The nearest house, there are two houses on the battlefield. One is abandoned. The other one does have a family living in it, but it was too far distant. And I looked around. I said, "Who couldn't? What couldn't?" Didn't hear anything more, but it was very distinct. It was like, "We couldn't." And I don't know whether it was had anything to do with the battle that was fought there, like we couldn't take this hill or we couldn't take the position. I don't know. Maybe it was just somebody's voice from the parking lot many hundreds of yards away, voice carried, but I didn't see any cars other than mine in the parking lot. No explanation for it, but just the words, "We couldn't."
Amazing. That is amazing. Thank you for that, sir.
Sure.
And this is a marker dedicated to the 2nd Connecticut Volunteer Heavy Artillery. And these are all the killed or mortally wounded here on June 1st through June 12th, 1864. And like I said, this was just from the Connecticut Volunteer Heavy Artillery. Many more were killed. This is where actually the first big battle was fought along this area here. And all of this area is just really hilly, and there's a lot of trenches on both sides. So if you were a Union soldier and you were going to war with the Confederate Army, it'd be very difficult to spot them. Number one, they had on their clothing gray. They had gray clothing on, so they blended in really good. Trees, and they were dug so deep into these trenches that it was possible for the Union soldiers to see. And over 100 years ago, it was chaos in these trees, blood everywhere. Some of these trees were here. They witnessed all of the fighting went on. Some men died with their backs up against these trees, had their last breath taken on these very trails here. So if you know anything about the Civil War, then you've more than likely heard of the Battle at Cold Harbor. Many, many lives were lost on the Union side. It was a big win for the Confederates. Union's losses were in the thousands upon thousands. And the Confederates, they only lost, I think, what was it, quarter, maybe if a quarter of what the Union soldiers lost. It was a very, very lopsided battle, and the main reason is because the Confederate soldiers had trenches that were dug so deep and so intricately carved. They were in zigzag patterns. Sometimes they were just back to back to back, and they had artillery cannons set up on these hills. They had sharpshooters, snipers. So when the Union soldiers came in there, they were slaughtered. They were just Confederate soldiers would just pop up out of those dugouts, take a couple of shots, take some Union guys down, and just get back down and crawl to another spot. And because, like I said, some were back to back, so it could be a soldier here, it could be another soldier here, and they didn't know what they were shooting at, and they could only shoot when they popped their heads up, so they didn't know where they were until they stuck their heads up out of the dugout, and by then it was too late. They were already catching a bullet by then. I honestly can understand where all the stories come from because of the amount of lives that were lost on that battlefield and never given proper burials. There are photos with soldiers just walking over skeletal remains and everything like it was. I imagine it was a very gory scene with most of the soldiers weren't even 18. A lot of them just enlisted and, they lied. And the government, they weren't too keen on saying, hey, let me see your ID to make sure you're 18. So they were just letting guys enlist and go out there and fight. And many of them were unexperienced. They didn't have good leadership, especially during this battle at Cold Harbor. It was a slaughter fest. It was a slaughter fest. Right, and this is where Grant's grand assault happened. Right here in this big field. And Cold Harbor is best known today for its high losses among the attacking Union formation on June 3rd. The 6th Corps made a small advance here, but most of the famous carnage occurred elsewhere. A few hundred yards to the north here, strongly entrenched Confederates easily smashed an isolated attack by the 18th Corps. A mile to the south this way, the 2nd Corps had nothing to show for its heavy losses. And if Grant's attack had proceeded exactly as planned, it would have been one of the most spectacular and complicated assaults of the war in Virginia. Yep. Instead of only 3 of the Union Army's 5 infantry corps, um, only 5 infantry corps advanced across the 3-mile front. Unconnected with each other, they fought individual battles and suffered separate failures. Lack of coordination among the attackers is considered one of the primary causes of Grant's defeat on June 3rd. And Union soldiers occupied this line through June 12th. Right here. Right here. All through here. You can see these signs. Union trenches were all around here. And if I walked over there, I would probably find shells and dig up skeletons and guns and all types of things because this is where it was fought. And bodies just laid here until they were bloated and decomposing, and a lot were just left out on the battlefield. They weren't properly buried or anything. Yeah. And I will go over there, but I respect the dead, and it also says that they want to preserve these earthworks, so they want you to stay off. But a lot of history here. A lot of history. I mean, we're talking about the Civil War here. Talking about the Civil War and heavy battles, heavy losses on the Union side. But they say they're always. And you can just look at these trenches here and just imagine thousands of men cramped up in a narrow trench, unable to get out or to get up or to stretch or stand up without danger to their life or limb. Like they couldn't lie down or sleep. They didn't have any room. Like it was bad. Day attacks, hunger, thirst, weariness, squalor, vermin, filth, disgusting odors everywhere. It was bad for them, man. It was bad for them, and the Confederate Army had sharpshooters that were just picking people off. So if you just stuck your head out of one of these trenches, you can get it blown off easily, easy. And for almost 2 weeks, from June 3rd to June 12th, this is where you know this is where they were entrenched, man. This is where they were entrenched. 2 weeks of being in this trench, fighting. I also imagine around that time there were a lot of colonists that were murdered, as well as slaves, escaped slaves, and the like. There's stories of murders of them as well, by the masses. There was also a hospital there where a lot of men died, and um, a lot of stories that I came across as I was doing my research. Very rich history. Now, the ghost sightings range from everything: Confederate soldiers, Union soldiers, artillerymen, men with rifles, men on horseback. The stories are countless, and you can find them all on Google. Not to mention the Rangers. They had more stories to tell me. I just didn't have time to listen to everything that they had. But they said they had stories for me, not just about there, but they worked at other parks and places, and they gave me a list of some other places to check out where they've experienced some paranormal phenomena. And they were older gentlemen. I would say one was probably in his 60s, the other one was probably in his 70s. He said he was retiring not long from now, and they've been working in the park system their whole lives. Good people. Park ranger had mentioned earlier, uh, he said he actually witnessed something there in that mound that I took a video of. I think it was called a rifle mound or something like that. But in the video, you can see it clearly, and I took a still shot of it as well, so you can see it. Like I said, I didn't see any type of apparitions or ghosts or anything, but that doesn't mean your experience won't be different. You might, who knows if you're going to see something or not. So I never discount or discredit anybody's, what they saw, anything that they said they seen or witnessed, and I take it all in. And I honestly believe everything that the Rangers told me out there today. It was very interesting. I got a lot of history. And like I said, in some of those videos, and I don't know if it's just the trees giving shade, but it was hot. I was sweating, and then in some parts of the trail, you just get cold and you just get chilly, and the wind just makes all the sweat, like it just gives you the chills. And it's in certain parts. And he said, one of the rangers said, when I mentioned that to him, he said, yeah, a lot of people say that. They always say like they feel cold, they feel hot, and funny story about the name Cold Harbor. there was actually an inn in that area where travelers could stay, and they didn't have, they provided shelter where you could spend the night, but they didn't provide hot food. So all the food they had was cold, sandwiches, cold soups, and whatnot. And they started to refer to the inn as the Cold Harbor Inn. And so that area just eventually became known as Cold Harbor. They had a couple of other Cold Harbor things there too. And I think the inn is no longer there, but I think the hospital that was there during the Civil War is still standing. The outside of it, they preserve that. One thing that the Rangers did mention on my visit there was they didn't particularly like relic hunters or ghost hunters and things of that nature. And I explained to them I'm not either of those. I'm just taking the ghost stories and I'm giving a piece of history and just letting the whoever's viewing it take what they want to take away from it. And they respected that, and that's why they were so courteous to me and willing to tell me their stories, and I thank them for that. And I thank you for watching. Have a great day.